My daughter banned me from her wedding, yet had the audacity to send me a bill for $80,000 to cover her grand celebration and honeymoon in Santorini. She even wrote, "Be grateful I'm letting you contribute." Yes, this is as crazy as it sounds. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just sat there, my anger cooling into something sharper. Her perfect, glittering day was about to unravel. Before I tell you what happened next, please subscribe to the channel and share in the comments where you're listening from. I was at my kitchen table in my quiet Asheville home, the late October sunlight filtering through thin, faded curtains. The envelope had arrived that morning, thick, cream-colored, with my daughter Hannah's sweeping handwriting across the front. I thought it was finally the invitation. After months of silence, some stubborn part of me still hoped. I ran my finger under the seal, picturing elegant cardstock announcing the date, the venue. Maybe even a note asking me to walk her down the aisle like we used to joke about. But no. Instead, paper slid out, crisp, professional, and itemized. $80,000, $55,000 for a cliffside villa in Santorini with whitewashed terraces and endless ocean views, $18,000 for catering, champagne flown in from France, lobster from Maine, another $7,000 for their honeymoon suite, complete with a private pool and butler service, and at the bottom, a handwritten note. "Mom, after the embarrassment you've caused the family, consider yourself lucky I'm letting you contribute. Send the check soon. Owen and I are counting on it." I stared at the words, the paper smooth and cold under my fingertips. Embarrassment. The same insult she'd thrown at me during our last fight, blaming me for never climbing higher in my teaching career, for the modest life we led after her father's death. I set the note down, the numbers on the page swimming. Beside me, a framed photo sat on the table. Hannah at 8 years old, gap-toothed and grinning at her first dance recital, her small hand clutching mine. How did that little girl become someone who saw me as nothing more than a checkbook? The shock came first, like a cold wave squeezing my chest. I crumpled the note, then smoothed it back out again. Blind anger wouldn't help. I stood slowly, my knees aching, and walked to the sink, splashed cold water on my face. But the sting stayed. Hannah thought she could cut me out of her life while dipping into the savings I'd built over decades, savings I'd fought to protect after losing Marcus to cancer in 2014. On the counter sat a silver locket my mother had given me when I turned 18, the metal worn from years of touch. Bonds were supposed to last. Hannah had severed ours clean. I could almost hear Owen's voice nudging her along, whispering that a retired schoolteacher would embarrass their high-profile friends. A slow smile tugged at my lips. Not kind, not bitter, but resolute. I folded the bill neatly, walked to my laptop on the counter, and opened it. Hannah's social media was private. Owen's wasn't. Within minutes, I had the date, November 15th, 2025. Photos showed the villa's ballroom in mock setups, sparkling chandeliers, walls dripping with flowers. I poured myself a glass of cheap Merlot, the sharp taste steadying me, and started jotting notes. Venue, Villa Aurelia. Caterer, Etoile Events. Photographer, Mila Crane. Wedding planner, Preston Vale. I wasn't going to confront them yet. That would give Hannah the satisfaction of dismissing me. No, I'd move in the shadows. By morning, I'd arranged a meeting with Preston Vale, the wedding planner, at his downtown office. He greeted me with a polished smile, his suit perfect, his handshake firm. "Mrs. Reed, it's a pleasure. Hannah mentioned you'd be finalizing payments today. We're thrilled you're helping bring her vision to life." I let him talk about floral arches and string quartets for a minute, his voice smooth as glass. Then I said, "Preston, did Hannah mention that I'm not even invited to this wedding?" His pen slipped from his fingers. No, she didn't. She banned me," I said evenly. "Yet she sent me a bill for $80,000 and told me to be grateful. Inform her that unless she speaks to me directly, the wedding stops. No funds. And if she pushes, remind her plans can be fragile." He hesitated, glancing at his open contracts. "Without full payment, we can't proceed. This will complicate things." "Good," I replied, standing. "Consider this my formal notice." He nodded slowly, still stunned, and promised to call her. I left the building with a small, controlled breath, my first real move on the board. But I knew Hannah wouldn't back down easily. I needed someone who understood her and didn't owe her a thing. That's when I thought of Grace. Grace Bennett, Hannah's childhood best friend. They'd been inseparable until college when Hannah dropped her after Grace refused to lie on a job application for Owen. Now, Grace worked as a private investigator, and she'd never forgiven my daughter. I still had her number. She picked up on the second ring. "Mrs. Reed? Wow, it's been years. I could use your help," I said. "Hannah's getting married. She banned me from the ceremony and sent me the bill to pay for it." Grace's laugh was low, sharp. "Sounds about right. What do you need?" "Eyes on the wedding, discreet photos, any chaos, document it. If they stumble, I want proof." "I can do that," she said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. "Let's meet at the bakery on Pine Street." When she walked in later that afternoon, she looked exactly like someone who'd spent years watching people's lies unravel. A camera slung across her chest, hair pulled back, gaze steady. We sat by the window, steam rising from our coffee cups, and traded stories. Grace told me how Owen had manipulated his way into tech jobs by taking credit for other people's work, including hers. She told me Hannah had perfected the art of the social snub. By the time we stood to leave, the plan was set. Grace would position herself near the villa on the wedding day and feed me updates. Her parting words followed me out the door. "Let's see how your daughter handles the rain." The first few days were quiet, too quiet. I kept busy, testing the old laptop, double-checking my notes, and taking long walks in the crisp Asheville air to keep my resolve steady. Then the voicemail started. The first was from Hannah, her voice clipped but controlled. "Mom, the planner says you pulled out. Vendors are threatening to cancel. Call me back. We need to fix this." The second was sharper. Owen this time. "You're being ridiculous. You owe us this. After Dad, after everything, it's your responsibility." Responsibility. I sipped my chamomile tea and replayed his words twice, noting the way they slid from entitlement to desperation. The third voicemail came the next day. Hannah again. Her composure had cracked. "Mom, seriously, pick up. This is spiraling. Just send the money and we can move past it." I didn't return any calls. Instead, I sent Grace a quick update. She replied within minutes. "Vendors restless. Rumors starting to circulate at the venue." By evening, the tension had stretched thin. My phone lit up again. Owen. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" He snapped immediately. "You're sabotaging the wedding. Do you even care?" I kept my tone calm. "You banned me. You sent me a bill like I was a sponsor. Remember your note? Be grateful." That was... He hesitated. "Look, it's not about that. Hannah's friends, the crowd we run with, you just wouldn't fit. But the money, you owe it to her after everything she's been through." The jab at everything she's been through was a familiar knife. "I raised her alone," I said evenly. "Sold what I had for your father's care, and you both ignore me unless you need something. No, Owen, no payment." His voice rose, raw. "You're ruining everything. Caterers want deposits, the villa's threatening fees. Just fix this." I glanced at the silver locket on the counter. Its quiet weight, a reminder of dignity that couldn't be bought. "Talk to me like a daughter would, not like a banker." There was silence. Then Hannah's voice cut in. It was on speaker. "This is absurd, Mom. You're humiliating us. Think of the embarrassment." I let the pause stretch. "Like banning your own mother from your wedding?" "That's not the point," she snapped. "We're building a life and you're acting petty." The word petty hit like a spark on dry grass, but I stayed measured. "No, this isn't petty. This is consequence." There was more shouting. Owen's voice, then Hannah's again, but I ended the call. Minutes later, a text from Grace came through. "Florist threatening to pull out. Photos incoming." The first image appeared. Boxes of flowers loaded back into a van, workers glancing toward the looming clouds. The cracks were starting to show. November 15th, 2025. The morning broke gray and wet, rain tapping against the window like impatient fingers. I'd been up before dawn, the ticking clock in the living room echoing the steady beat of the past week's tension. The weather app confirmed it, heavy downpours all day. I brewed coffee, the scent rich and grounding, and settled at the table with my phone close by. At exactly 7 a.m., Grace texted, "At the villa. Vendors arriving or leaving. Photos soon." The first image came minutes later, the florist's crew unloading, then reloading half the arrangements, their faces tight under umbrellas. Caption, "Deposit dispute. They're leaving." More followed in a slow drip, an idle catering truck, workers boxing untouched china, the villa's polished driveway slick with rain. Around noon, guests began to arrive. Grace's photos showed clusters huddled under tents, umbrellas opening like dark blossoms against the storm. One overheard line from a man in a suit. "Where's the setup?" My phone vibrated on the table. Hannah. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened, her voice was unsteady. "Mom, send the money now. The estate manager is threatening to shut us down. Please." The next photo from Grace was a gut punch. Hannah in her gown, standing by a rain-streaked window, makeup smudged. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was this too much? But then I remembered the bill, the ban, the smug note telling me to be grateful. The doubt dissolved. Justice isn't gentle. By 2 p.m., Grace's updates painted the scene clearly, guests milling in confusion, some slipping away into the rain. Another voicemail. Owen this time. The edge in his voice was gone, replaced by something almost pleading. "Mom, guests are laughing. Please, help us salvage this." The rain outside intensified, beating against the glass like applause for the inevitable. Then, pounding at my door. I looked through the peephole. Hannah and Owen stood on the porch in damp coats thrown over pajamas, hair plastered to their foreheads. I cracked the door, mist curling inside. "What are you doing here?" "Let us in," Hannah said quickly. "It's ruined. Vendors left. Guests scattered. Please, if you wire the money now, we can still salvage something." I stepped aside, just enough to let them into the warmth of the hallway. Their scent, rain, hairspray, and desperation filled the air. Hannah's voice softened. "It was a mistake. The ban. Owen thought it would be better for the image. We need your help." I folded my arms. "Would you value me if I didn't have a wallet?" Her eyes darted. "Of course, you're family, but success has standards." There it was. Truth, stripped bare. "No," I said simply. "Greed has a price." The silence that followed was heavy. When I opened the door again, they hesitated on the threshold, rain already soaking the steps outside. Owen tried one last time. "Mom, you'll regret this." I didn't answer. I closed the door, their retreating footsteps swallowed by the storm. The rain kept falling long after they left, drumming steady against the roof while I sat in my armchair, watching the drops race down the glass. I didn't hear from Hannah the rest of that night. By morning, Grace had sent a new batch of photos. Empty tents flapping in the wind, puddles pooling on the villa's marble terrace, chairs left in haphazard clusters. She added, "Guests leaving early." Whispers everywhere, vendors already talking. Later, my neighbor Mr. Ellis called. "Saw Hannah yesterday," he said, his voice tinged with disapproval. "She was yelling at some delivery guy in the driveway, demanding discounts like she owned the place. Folks around here are starting to talk." I thanked him, making a mental note. Every piece of gossip was another crack in their polished image. By late afternoon, texts from Hannah began to trickle in, selfish, petty, destroying our day over ego, each one short, sharp, designed to sting. I didn't reply. That evening, Grace texted again. Escalation. Caterer gone. DJ refusing to come without payment. Guests making jokes. It was exactly the unraveling I'd pictured. But then, a message from an unknown number appeared. "Mrs. Reed, regarding wedding cancellation fees." The sentence trailed off, as if they already knew the collapse was inevitable. The next 2 days were quiet. No calls, no texts, just the steady rhythm of rain and the hum of my house settling. Then, mid-morning, Grace sent the confirmation I'd been waiting for. Full collapse. Partial refunds only, their reputations shot. When she called later, her voice was warm. "You did it. The villa's staff is still talking. Guests say it was the worst wedding they've ever been to. Oh, and I've already picked up 3 new clients from people who heard I was working the event." I smiled into the phone. "Thank you, Grace. You've been more help than you know." She laughed softly. "After the way Hannah treated me, this was personal." We talked for another 10 minutes, old memories slipping in between the details of the fallout. When we hung up, I realized something. The house didn't feel as empty as it had before. It felt solid. A few nights later, I built a small fire in the fireplace. The bill sat on the coffee table, folded neatly as if still waiting to be paid. I picked it up, held it over the flames, and let it go. The paper curled, blackened, then crumbled into ash. Watching it disintegrate felt lighter than I expected. By the week's end, neighbors had stopped me during walks to say they'd heard about the wedding fiasco. Mrs. Hargrove from down the street emailed me directly. "Your stand reminded me not to let people take advantage. Coffee soon?" It surprised me the way alliances seemed to grow from the wreckage. I never heard an apology from Hannah or Owen. Maybe I never will. But the seed of regret had been there in her eyes that day on my porch. And regret has a way of taking root. The morning after the rain finally cleared, I stepped outside. The air was cool, sunlight cutting through retreating clouds. The neighborhood was quiet, but it felt different, steadier somehow. I poured a fresh cup of coffee, raised it in a small toast to myself, and whispered, "To dignity, reclaimed." Inside, the silver locket caught the light where it lay on the table. I touched it once before heading to the kitchen, ready to start my day. Hannah's perfect image might have cracked, but my peace, my self-worth, was whole again.